Hello, I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the final episode of Taskmaster Series 18, and I think this is a really good one, although it was quite controversial in a couple of these scoring decisions. So yeah, lots to talk about in this episode. Starting off with the prize task as usual, and the prize task this time was to bring in the most buttock clenching item, which I think was a very funny item. I loved the intro to this, it was very, very funny. Yeah, just absolutely ridiculous, which I really, really liked. Baba brought in a frog, which he described as being the demons from hell. I am surprised and also not surprised that Baba's afraid of frogs. That seems very in character for him. But yeah, that's very funny, and I think he perhaps didn't do the best in terms of scoring on this one because he brought in something that only really applied to himself and a very select few people, whereas Greg isn't afraid of frogs, so seeing a frog wouldn't make his buttocks clench. So yeah, probably not the best decision in terms of scoring, but it was very funny. And then we had Andy bringing in a padlock. First of all, with Andy, I love his outfit, I love the dedication to it, a little bit from all of his outfits that he's worn throughout the series, which I absolutely loved. I thought it was really, really fun and yeah, very Taskmastery, which yeah, very much enjoyed. As I said, he brought in a padlock, and this padlock was for a lion enclosure, which is broken, so obviously the lions have escaped, and that I think is a fun prize in itself, but this is made even funnier by the fact that he decided to translate what the lions were saying, and he was basically telling Greg that he eats tall people, which, yeah, very fun, very ridiculous. Jack's one I thought was very clever. Even just asking to approach Greg would be scary, especially the way that he said it. You know something weird might possibly happen if your prize involves getting very close to somebody. So, yeah, very, off from the start. But yeah, his prize, if you can call it a prize, was the sound of rubber gloves followed by the sounds of lube and then the sound of a drill, which yeah, I think would make anybody's buttocks clench. Very, very clever. I thought it was very fun, and I liked that it also kind of targeted Greg a little bit, made Greg feel a bit weird, whereas normally Alex is the one having the weird things happen to him. So yeah, very much enjoyed that. Emma was a similar vein to Jack in making Greg uncomfortable by doing something a bit odd, and hers was this giant long feather stick that she pointed at Greg and kind of moved towards him menacingly, and yeah, that again would be very off-putting, so I definitely think it fits the category very well. I personally hate being tickled, so this would have been very off-putting to me, so yeah, I would have won in my books. And then we had Rosie, and I think Rosie has really topped off this prize task by bringing in a used enema. I think it was very funny, very Rosie prize. This, I'm not surprised that Rosie brought this in. I think it's very in the same vein as a lot of the things she's done before on the show. So yeah, that I think was very good, and I think just the conversation around it about how she'd want them to use it and things like that was just all very funny. So Greg ended up scoring this by giving Baba 1 point, Andy 3, Rosie 4, and Emma and Jack 5, which personally I do agree with. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Baba's very lucky to get 2 points instead of 1, but I do think Jack and Emma, because they were so similar in their prize task attempts, I think it makes sense that they're grouped together on 5. The first proper task in this episode was to count the number of chairs in the cinema. And yeah, there's lots of rules to this one, which is probably why it ended up being one of the most controversial ones. So some of the rules was they must only give one answer. They couldn't say any numbers until you give your final answer. You must say the name of every object that appears on the screen. For every one that you don't say or get wrong, you get a minute added onto your time, and you also get a minute added on time for every chair that you were wrong. So if you're one over, you'll get 1 minute, and if you're one under, you'll get 1 minute, and so on. Lots of rules, a little bit of confusion about whether or not it was because I think they said you'll be disqualified in one thing, but it is actually with your number. If you say 3, which we'll get on to, if they said 3, then you would be 1 minute for every chair you got wrong, because that classes as your answer, whereas I think some people thought that you got disqualified, but it's not really that. So yeah, as I mentioned, there have been debates around this task, which I think is quite fun. I do think it went a little bit far, which is probably why, I'll talk about this properly in a second, but probably why Alex had to get involved and make a little statement, which I think is mad that he had to do that. But let's talk about the task it first, and then we'll get on to the debates around it. So first of all, we had Rosie go first. And I think she was doing pretty well. I think her way of counting probably wasn't the most efficient by physically touching every single chair, because it would take ages, rather than, I think the best way to do it is at least get the bulk, you times the amount of chairs one way versus the chairs the other way, to get an adder up, which is difficult because you've got to do multiplication in your head or use a calculator. But I do think counting each chair individually by going up and touching it, not the most efficient way. But unfortunately that didn't matter, as she accidentally said the number 3 when she was counting. She got confused by the hedgehog, or got distracted by the hedgehog on the screen as one of the things she had to say. And yeah, she just messed up, but that's exactly what this task was made to do. It was made for people to mess up and accidentally say a number, which unfortunately she did, and I did feel quite bad for her, but it was quite funny. I liked that she realised initially and just gave up. If I had said a number, I also would have given up. No point counting all the chairs if you've already said a number. And yeah, not too many people realised straight away or tried to get away with it. So I did quite like that she resigned to the fact that she had to set a number. I think her disappointment was very real, and yeah, it was devastating to watch. And then we had Andy and Emma paired together. Both of them did really well, I think, both in the counting of the chairs and in the saying what was on the screen. I think Emma especially was perhaps a bit distracted by the things that were on the screen. She was very attentive to the screen, whereas she perhaps could have been a bit more attentive to the chairs. I loved how confused she was, and how difficult she found it to not say numbers. I think she was mouthing them at one point, which I think is very dangerous territory. But yeah, she just seemed very scared of accidentally saying a number. Andy did very well on this one. He got to the number 328, as we later find out there was 333 chairs in the room. He rightly predicted that there might be some hidden things, which they were shown to be 5 little chairs on the stage, or 5 or 6 little chairs on the stage, which I think is very tricky. But as he expected, they're gonna do something like that, have some sort of hidden chairs. But yeah, unfortunately he didn't see them, and nobody else saw them either. And yeah, Emma guessed at 318 chairs. She seemed very confident about this, but she also didn't. She got less things on the screen wrong, so they did end up equaling out to something quite similar. Andy got his in 13 minutes, and Emma, with all the penalties, got hers in 19 minutes, which I think was pretty good considering. I thought the way that they did the scoring on this was quite good in terms of how they calculated the final thing, because obviously with it being fastest wins, that's got to be taken into account, and also the actual number of chairs, if you've worked that out correctly, needs to be taken into account. So I think the 1 minute per chair wrong, under or over, I think is a really good way of getting to timing. So you don't have to go, Greg doesn't have to look at it subjectively. He doesn't have to say, oh well, you got really accurate to the chairs but you took half an hour, versus you guessed in 5 minutes and were 20 chairs out. I think it worked that out very well. After their attempt, they also shared what the clue was in the video on the screen, the things popping up. I don't expect Alex to have expected anybody to work it out, but yeah, it was just absolutely, I think it was impossible. I don't think anybody would have worked it out. It was just ridiculous. Quite funny to have their reactions, and I liked that everyone just didn't accept it. It was just oh, that was too difficult, we wouldn't have been able to get that. We then had Jack and Baba paired together, and both of them had a similar approach with using a calculator, which I think was really smart. There was nothing in the rules against them using the calculator, and again, both of them had quite good tactics. I think they obviously worked out chairs in one way versus chairs the other, added it up that way. Baba seemed quite efficient, he worked it out quite quickly, and yeah, he actually ended up winning this task. He completed it total with the chairs and everything. He was 7 chairs away, so got a total of 12 minutes in the end, which was very impressive. Jack had a few issues with his attempt. So first of all, he wasn't saying anything really that appeared on the screen. I think he said the first one and then kind of forgot about it until realising there was something else on the screen later. So I think he probably did miss quite a few. As I said, he did use a calculator in the end, but unfortunately that didn't matter, because they showed him, after his attempt, they showed him saying the number 3 under his breath. I like that it was both Rosie and Jack saying 3, quite a coincidence. But yeah, this is quite unfortunate because he didn't outwardly say it, he obviously said it, but he didn't say it as loudly or as obviously as Rosie, like something you might not even realise yourself that you had said. He was very much under his breath when he was trying to do calculations. And yeah, again, I like that he resigned to the fact that he just said it, just saying, of course I said it in the studio, like not even attempting to debate it, because I think he just knew he would lose. He obviously said a number, but that wasn't the controversy of this task. There's actually like two ones. One was quite small, which I'll say in a second. Some people arguing that the chairs in the cinema weren't chairs, that they were just seats, which I think is a bit silly. I think they are very obviously chairs, but like, I don't know, bit of a fun debate. But yeah, I think people were saying that the right answer was 5 or something because there were 5 little chairs there. But yeah, like, not really a proper controversy. The real one was about Andy. He said in response to Alex's question about whether he liked whatever was shown on the screen, and he said, well, I couldn't eat a whole one, saying the word one at the end. And a lot of people on the internet were going crazy, saying he should have got disqualified or like been penalised for saying the word one because that's a number. And they left it for quite a while. Obviously this wasn't pulled up in the episode or in the studio, nobody mentioned it. And Andy ended up getting 4 points overall in this task. But yeah, afterwards, Alex made a little statement online saying, well, first of all, saying that Greg's rule is final and no one should be debating him, which I agree with. But yeah, that he actually got Susie Dent involved to clarify the words. Obviously, the resident expert on this. Susie Dent's ruling was that this was a pronominal use rather than a numerical use of the word one. Greg and Susie Dent say that he didn't say the number 1. Personally, I agree with this completely. I did think when he said it, like, oh, are they gonna say that is saying a number? Which I think there is justification for them to do that. I think you could be very, very harsh with that ruling, but I feel like you could apply that to the word two, like saying, oh, I want to, or me too. Like, would that be using the word two as a number? Like, I know the spelling is different, but like, you could argue it that, and I think it's just so harsh and unfair and like sets down like, yeah, I just think it would be impossible to rule that without then having to say, oh, we're gonna have to watch back to see if everybody said the word two, things like that. And I think it's just simpler to say he wasn't using it as a number. I think there is a clear distinction between using that word as a number versus using it in another way, as like a different word, which I would argue that he did. So yeah, I fully agree with this. I do like debates around scoring. As you know, I do this on my channel a lot, but I don't think I've seen a debate as big as this, maybe except for May with the drum task or the pineapple task. But I don't think they've gone as far as this with Alex having to actually make a statement about it. This is just crazy. And I do think, they've said it in the show, but people being soft for Jack, but I do think people wanted Jack to win, and were saying this because it was quite close between Andy and Jack, and Andy obviously, spoiler, ended up winning. I think that might be part of the reason why people are arguing so strongly for this, because they wanted Jack to win. I think it's a bit rich coming from me, but like in the end, the scores don't really matter. I personally do like keeping up with the scores, like deciding whether or not I agree with Greg, but I do think the extent to which this debate got to is just a bit ridiculous. Like, it was just all I was seeing online for like a good week, which, yeah, just ridiculous. However, I will say that in Alex's statement, he said that Baba was not running in the maze task when he was wearing his hot dog, which I fully disagree with. I will stand very firmly on that and say that he was running and that he wasn't walking at a gentle pace. But as Alex said, that Greg's rule is final. So yeah, nothing we can do about it. But yeah, I think this perhaps went a little bit from just light-hearted debates about the scoring to like making it a bit more of like a controversial issue of the show. I think Alex made that statement in good humour. I like that he got Susie Dent involved. She's ruled on a couple of things before, which I always enjoy. But yeah, I'd be interested to see what you guys think about that. Do you think that there is a very clear distinction between the word one and the number one, or do you think that he should have been penalised for that? Yeah, I'd be interested to know what you guys think. I feel like most people's opinion on the internet was that he should have been disqualified. So I felt a bit out of place actually agreeing with Greg's scoring, which I think for the most part on the other way around. But yeah, so that's quite fun. The second task in this episode also had quite a bit of debate around it. Not as much, but yeah, so we've got more debate to talk about on this one. This task, you had a choice of a few things to do. So you could either choose to throw 5 5s in a row with using dice. You could do 100 press-ups, you could eat a raw onion, you could find the needle in the haystack, or you could sit silently for 10 minutes. It was fastest wins, and you could only attempt 2 things. So if you're struggling with one, you could go and try another, but after that, it was either you had to do one of the 2 that you tried. My instinct was to do the sitting silently for 10 minutes. I feel like that's fairly easy to do. The only issue is that it does take 10 minutes, so it would be quite easy for other people to do quicker than you if they were doing other attempts. But I do think that was the safest option. It's the lowest risk, definitely, unless you mess up at 9 minutes and then you're a bit screwed. But that's probably what I would have gone for. Definitely would not have done the press-ups or the raw onion. Just absolutely no chance. I'm terrible at press-ups. The first 2 attempts, Baba and Rosie, they both did initially decide to sit silently for 10 minutes. As I said, this is probably the route I would have gone down. Rosie did give up on the sitting silently and decided to do 100 press-ups, which I think was a very bold move, but she did it. I like that we saw Alex kind of ruling on what classed as a press-up, what didn't class as a press-up, which I thought was quite fun, and it was quite fun to see Rosie's reaction to whenever he ruled that it wasn't a press-up, like giving him the finger, which I just thought was very funny, and I think very impressive that she did decide to do the 100 press-ups. Baba, as I said, did these sitting silently for 10 minutes. He did stand up. I think he was going to lie down on the floor on the yoga mat, but did realise, thankfully, that he had to sit silently. So he was able to correct that and did sit silently for the 10 minutes. There was a potential trick, a place where you could mess up by the fact that the timer was going and would have hit 10 minutes a few minutes before Baba's actual 10 minutes had ended, like his sitting silently for 10 minutes. So he was very clever not to mess up on that bit as well. I think he was quite close, a bit too close for my liking to start talking, because if you're a millisecond out, they're going to pick you up on that and potentially disqualify you. So I personally probably would have waited another 10-15 seconds just to make sure. But yeah, that could have just been the editing. It might not have been that close. Both of these I thought were pretty good attempts. Baba did his in 12 minutes and Rosie completed hers in 10 minutes as well. We then had Andy's and Jack's attempt paired together. Andy's, I thought, was the smartest idea of them all. I thought it was so clever. He drew 5 dots on all sides of the dice, which I thought was very, very smart. The only issue with this was trying to erase the 6th dot on the number 6. He did run into some issues there, but I think overall, such a smart idea. Yeah, just so good. Second time he's applied dots onto things. The first one in the fishing challenge. So yeah, this I thought was very, very smart. So good. He managed to complete the task in 2 minutes and 40 seconds, which I thought was very impressive. Then we had Jack's attempt, and this is the controversial one. So Jack decided that he would get to 5 5s by adding and subtracting, which as soon as he said that, I was like, well, that's not going to work, is it? That's not how it works. So instinctively, I was against this. I didn't think it was a workaround that really worked for the task, because you weren't rolling 5 5s. And I stood by that until it was revealed that he rolled exactly 25, which I thought was quite impressive. I think if he had subtracted anything, I would 100% be on he should be disqualified completely. But the fact he hit 25 without having to subtract, I think, is very impressive, and it gives him grounds to argue that he rolled 5 5s. Like I said, if he had subtracted anything, if it wasn't exactly 25, I would say he has no ground to stand on. But the 5 5, getting 25, really good. So I am very impressed by that. And also he didn't roll any 5s either, which I thought was quite funny. So yeah, lots of people were debating whether or not he should have got the points. Some people very, very strongly saying that he rolled 5 5s. Personally, I'm 90% he shouldn't get the points, because yeah, he didn't roll 5 5s. It's not really in the how the task is worded. I think he didn't roll the number 5 times. He rolled 25. He didn't roll any 5s. So it just, I think in that aspect, I don't really agree with him. But what I do agree with is Greg's scoring. I think taking the points away, but giving him 1 point for like his effort, because as I said, I do think that rolling 25 is quite good. Like, he rolled the equivalent of 5 5s in terms of adding up. I don't think he rolled the dice 5 times, and he didn't get 5 times. He got to 25 in more than 5 rolls of the dice. And yeah, again, I don't know if it's people really wanting Jack to win, they're really, really strongly for this, or whether or not they just do think that the 25 should have won. I think his workaround is very different to Andy's workaround. Andy made it so he did roll 5 5s. And Alex even pulled him up on the 6, saying, like, you know, the chalk's rubbed off, that's a 6. It didn't count. I kind of agree with Emma in the fact that I do think Alex is less combative to Jack. Alex immediately pulled up Andy on the 6 being rolled, and he immediately pulled up Emma on her trying to, like, basically drop the dice, and saying that that didn't count. But just adding and subtracting your numbers counts. So I do find it quite funny. I think it fits the vibe of the season with everybody just admiring Jack, but I do think that he is perhaps a little bit biased. Then on to Emma's attempt. As I said, she did try to fake roll the dice, which I do agree shouldn't have counted. She was dropping the dice, not rolling the dice. But she decided to go for the needle in the haystack, which a few people had questioned doing, and she made the right decision by finding the needle in the haystack. This could have gone either way, which I think people were sensible not to go look for it, because it could have been an actual needle, like a needle in an actual massive haystack. But it wasn't. It was a tiny clump of hay in the lab with a needle underneath it. So very easy win for Emma. I think, yeah, she obviously made the right decision on this. But it was risky. She could have been there for hours trying to find the needle in a haystack. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this task. I liked them having to choose it. We got a bit of variety in the attempt. You know, the fact that they were doing completely different things. So it made the variety, I think, made it very entertaining. And as I said, I do agree with Greg's ruling on this. He did give 1 point to Jack. Baba got 2 points, Rosie got 3 points, Andy got 4, and Emma got 5 points. But again, I'd be interested to see what you guys think. There's been a lot of debate about this one online as well. So yeah, I'm curious to know like what the consensus is. And the final task of this season was a creative task, which I think is not the most common thing for them to do. This task was to present the goose. Best the goose wins. And this, when they read it out, I was like, okay, that's like doesn't sound like the greatest task to be ending the series on. Boy, was I wrong. This was such a good task. I loved everybody's attempts, and it was just so funny and weird and bizarre, and I just loved it. So we started off with Rosie's attempt. Rosie's attempt involved her kind of like dressed up as like an old worldy person, presenting the goose in French. The goose was Alex dressed up as a goose, and she was commanding it to lay golden eggs and then dance. It was just very bizarre, and I like bizarre. It felt very Taskmastery. It was simple yet like very weird, and I loved that. I thought it was just very, very well done. Andy's one was probably my favourite though. I thought this one was so good. It just kind of fits my personal style of humour a bit more, I would say, than anybody else's. This was a documentary about the goose. I think it was just really funny that the geese managed to be flying overhead that at the time he was filming this. Loved him calling them imposters. I just thought this was perfect in terms of like a parody documentary. So there was like the great presenter style, him popping up in the hedges to observe the geese, the fade away from the geese when they were about to mate, obviously then made funny by the fact that he did just then focus on the geese mating. I liked him throwing the goose, like when it was simulating flying, the evolution of the egg getting bigger, and then him just kicking it really far like to break it so that the goose could hatch. Just so many funny things in this. I just thought it was absolutely hilarious. Pretentious wording of things that you might get in some documentaries. My favourite quote was like, these are like our blood brothers in the ballet of evolution. So funny. I just really enjoyed it. Like in some ways it's not as creative as other ones because it's more of like a parody style, but personally I just thought it was really funny. We then had Baba's attempt, and he went in a completely different direction than anybody, citing this moment as like his peak breakdown, and his attempt was to just act out being a goose and laying a golden egg, which was the golden egg that was on the table. In some ways, this I think could be the worst attempt of a task ever, but in other ways it's also my favourite attempt. It is just madness how little effort he put into it, how worried he was about people perceiving him as being a goose online, not dressing Alex up as a goose, not doing anything else, not presenting something else as a goose, ultimately deciding to pretend to lay an egg. Just absolutely amazing. I thought it was just so good. We then had Jack, who created like an airplane that he was in, and I thought the fact that he managed to create that in such a short amount of time was really impressive. I thought, it was just a lot of effort that went into it. I didn't like his a film as much as everybody else's. His thing was using it to drop leaflets around to promote a supermarket, which I thought was quite funny. I like the special effects, as Greg pointed out, but I think the focus on this one was more towards the special effects rather than, I think, the creativity and the effort that went into creating the little airplane, because that, I think, is the most impressive bit for me out of his attempt. We then had Emma's attempt, which was to create a play called The Goose. It was a 2-person play with her and Alex, and it was about a mother who was not getting any love from her son because he was so obsessed with the goose outside. I thought it was funny. There was she played on the emotions a bit, very dramatic, which I really liked. I thought it was really well done. I liked Alex's performance in it as well. So many funny things, just the names being Paul and Pauline. Greg ultimately decided to score it by going into how complex the narrative was, which was something he really likes to do. So he gave Baba 1 point, which I think is completely fair. He then gave Jack 2 points, which again, I think is fair. I think there could have been more attention to the effort that he put into making that airplane, as I said. He then gave Andy 3 points, which I do disagree with. I mean, in terms of his scoring choice to do it on the complexity of it, yes, it's the least complex, but I do think there was so much effort to it. There was it was just very funny, a great parody of things. And then he gave Emma 4 and Rosie 5. For me, Andy, Emma and Rosie are very difficult to separate. They're all so funny and weird and unique in their own ways. And I think it was very difficult. I don't necessarily think one of these people should have got 5 over the others. I would have found it very difficult to score and probably would have ended up copping out and saying, oh, you'll get 5. We then had the studio task. And Andy wore his hot dog costume, which lots of people predicted. I'm not surprised that somebody decided to do that. I think it's it's a very entertaining thing to do, and it adds a lot of tension to the episode. The task was to look at a person in the circle. If you looked at the same person who was looking at you, then you were disqualified, and it was last one standing. And you had to win 2 times before you won the task. And this was winner takes all. I feel like I've been just repeating the same thing over and over again. I don't like winner takes all on the studio tasks, on any of the tasks for that matter. I think it really takes away from the effort that everybody else is putting into. This one I think probably has to be winner takes all because of the nature of the task, but there have been other tasks in this season, live tasks that were winner takes all when they could have easily done a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th place. I think it is quite mean that they gave a winner takes all on the final task, if they would have known somebody was wearing the hot dog, but even if they'd done the tasks before, they would have probably suspected that somebody would save it for the very last task of the season because it's a very entertainery thing to do. But that is the risk that you take. That is the risk with the hot dog costume. Emma and Rosie both got very unlucky with their ones, the task that they got. So, that is the risk. You don't know what your task is going to be. So he could have messed it up in a different way by choosing a different task to wear his hot dog on. But I do like the fact that somebody did commit to it and do it on the last episode. It was just entertaining, and I feel like, though, they should have thought about it a bit more from an entertainment perspective. I think having a final task where somebody could get potentially double points, they could have made the task a bit more tense and dramatic. I don't think the task was that good. I think this for me is a very average studio task. There's not much ability for them to be funny in this studio task, whereas I feel like the tasks that I like the most are a bit more competitive, a bit more the comedians have a chance to shine. Even just the guessing whether the things will sink or float, I think was more entertaining than this, because you've got the contestants like participating a bit more in the task, not just in the actual task, but in like the banter in the studio environment a bit more, whereas we didn't really get that with this task. And I think if you're thinking about this is the final part of the season. This is the peak. This could be win or lose for some contestants. This could make or break the season. You've got to, I think, put a bit more effort into this task, make it a bit more entertaining. All in all, I don't think it's a bad task, but I just don't think it is season finale, very last task in a season task. Like, it's just not that good. And I think it was made worse, I think, by them not really knowing, like the contestants not really knowing how to approach this one as well. So Andy later said in the podcast episode that he thought Emma was his closest competitor, which I was quite surprised that she came third. I thought she was pretty close to winning, but he thought that Emma was his biggest competitor, so that's why he focused on trying to get her out, which I think made a lot of sense. However, in the first round, we ended up having Jack, Emma and Rosie stuck for a few like cycles, all looking in the same thing, so that nobody was out. So I think that is just chance that Jack won. But on the second one, knowing that you had to have 2 wins to be able to win, the fact that Baba and Rosie were like avoiding looking at Jack, I think was very bizarre. I don't know if they just didn't understand the task. But yeah, they should have both been looking at Jack. You needed to get him out to be able to have a chance of winning. So I thought that was very bizarre. And unfortunately, I think left the task feeling a little bit flat because, yeah, we didn't even have a tense, ooh, who's it going to be? It was just over a bit too quickly. So, I mean, this is something that I think I've said a lot in this season, that I just don't think the live tasks have been that strong, which is a shame because, you know, they're what ends the episode. That's where the contestants have a chance to do a task in a live environment where they perhaps might get a bit more flustered. You've got the audience being involved, like shouting back, you're doing a task in front of Greg, the Taskmaster, not just in front of Alex. So there's so much opportunity there for the contestants to get really competitive and like energetic with the tasks as well, and like I think to think a bit more quickly on their feet because they tend to be quite short tasks, whereas we've not really had that in this season. I think that just the studio tasks have just not been amazingly like to my liking. It hasn't taken away, I don't think, from my enjoyment of the season. I think the season overall has been very good. I think the tasks, like the pre-recorded tasks, have been quite strong. I think everybody has put a really good amount of effort into the tasks. Like even Jack being like the grumpy, oh, I don't like this. I think he put in a lot of effort. And Baba, I thought, was really entertaining, you know, kind of being the uncertain one. Emma and Andy and Rosie being all insane and ridiculous and silly. Like there's just been so many strong points in this season. It's just for me that like the live task letting it down a bit. I would also say that I don't think they made use of the location for this season as well. I think they had a theme park. I mean, obviously there's probably so many restrictions, but even just using like they didn't use the backdrop that much. The only ones that they used the backdrop with was the throwing the balls at the cans task. Obviously they used the maze, which I thought was a great task, and they used the location for the fishing ones, but the cinema one, like it doesn't really take into account the location, and you know, just thinking about how much they probably paid to use that location as well, I think they probably could have used it a bit more. Like I said, even just as a backdrop, to have something very impressive and such a big scale behind the contestants doing their silly little tasks. I think just the contrast between that would have been quite good. I haven't even talked about the scores yet. So Emma won this episode, which means she's won 4 out of 10 of the episodes, which I think is probably one of the highest amounts of episode wins to have not won the season, because the season was won by Andy, which I have already alluded to. So in terms of the scoring, Rosie came last, which I was quite surprised by. I thought she had a really strong start. I thought she was very competitive. She had very high scores throughout the whole season. I was very surprised that she came last. She got 137 points. Baba came 4th with 147 points. So like that, I don't think there was it didn't seem like there was going to be a 10-point difference between Rosie and Baba. I mean, I think this is partly due to the fact that Baba got double on his hot dog and Rosie didn't get any points on her hot dog. Emma came 3rd with 152 points. Personally, I thought she could potentially win. Once we got to episode 8, I thought she was in for a chance. But yeah, Jack and Andy must have had such a massive lead. So yeah, she came 3rd, which I think is very respectable. Jack came 2nd with 157 points. And Andy came 1st with 160. And I think from the offset, not from the offset because Rosie won the first episode, but from mid season. I think obviously we kind of knew that it would be between Andy and Jack. I think they were both very, very strong. So yeah, Andy won, and as I said, there's been lots of debates about this, like with the chair task, with whether or not Jack should have got those the points in the dice task. But I thought Andy definitely 100% deserved this win. I thought he put in so much effort, was really creative. I thought put a lot of effort into the task, like particularly the prize tasks. I think he had some really ingenious solutions, but he wasn't like immune to being like, he wasn't a like Mae Martin who was just naturally amazing at all the tasks and just kind of ran with the season. And he did make mistakes, he did get things wrong. So I think for me, he was a really, really strong contestant. That I liked that there was some actual tension about who would win between Emma, Jack and Andy. I liked that like he didn't completely like run away with it, like there was no chance anybody else would win. I like when it's a bit closer and you're not 100% sure who's going to win. After the episode finished, we then got the New Year's treat announcement. A lot of people were expecting the season 19 announcement, but I think we've kind of got onto this trend where the episode before the series before the New Year's treat is going to announce the New Year's treat contestants, not the next series contestants. So the contestants this time were David James, who is a footballer, Hannah Fry, who is a mathematician and presenter, Martin Lewis, who is like a financial presenter, Melanie Blatt, who is a singer, and Sue Johnston, who is an actress known for the royal family. This lineup, I don't think I'm as excited as I was for last year. However, I am pretty excited about Hannah Fry. I watch a lot of her stuff. I think she's very clever, obviously, but I think she's just very entertaining, and I can't wait to see perhaps whether or not she'll use her maths skills and her science knowledge in the tasks in any way. So she's definitely the one that I'm most excited for. I'm sure people are excited for other people in this lineup, but yeah, she's the one that I'm most excited for. And I did see that she actually leaked her appearance in New Year's Treat, or I don't know whether it was New Year's Treat or Series 19, on Instagram. She put up an Instagram story about it and didn't take it down, which I thought was quite odd. Like, I was actually questioning whether or not it was actually a leak or whether it was just something cool that she had made. But yeah, so yeah, I'm quite excited about the New Year's Treat. I think it's always quite fun, even if you don't really know many of the people on it. It's just more Taskmaster, and I think it's really fun, especially for like a one episode thing. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of the New Year's Treat announcement, of the Series 18 finale and Series 18 as a whole. I did thoroughly enjoy Series 18. I was really looking forward to it. After like each episode, I was really excited to watch the next one, which is always a good sign. I mean, it's never really not been like that. But yeah, I was very excited for it, and I thought all of the contestants were absolutely fantastic. Emma, I think, was personally my favourite. I really liked Emma's comedy before she was on Taskmaster. And I think she slowly developed throughout the series as like, I thought she was very funny from the start, don't get me wrong, but I think as the season went on, she got funnier, she got more argumentative, she got more competitive, she got weirder. I just thought she was fantastic. Rosie, I knew would be great. Jack, I knew would be great. I think they're both very, very strong comedically, and I think both like their completely contrasting personalities worked very well together, and they were both great on the show. Baba and Andy I didn't really know much of, but I very quickly came to love as well. Andy I thought was just wacky and weird and just so fun, and yeah, I liked I didn't really get many of his cricket references, but I thought it was very fun. I liked his effort in the costumes. Baba, again, I didn't really know too much, and I think he kind of defied my expectations as well. I liked that he was kind of scared of things. I wasn't really expecting that, especially like if you've seen the show, you kind of know what you're getting into. I liked that he didn't really seem to have a clue about some things and seemed a bit out of his depth. I also liked how confident he was despite being scared of everything. I thought that contrast was very funny. Yeah, I thought he was a great character, and I think I just kind of can't wait to see what everybody does next. In terms of like other comedic things that they do. I thought, yeah, they were all absolutely amazing. And I think probably the highlight of the season in terms of every aspect that we consider, like tasks, Alex and Greg, the contestants, the studio environment. I think that the contestants were the most entertaining and most valuable asset of this season. I thought they were all incredibly strong. So yes, I think that's everything I was going to say about this episode. I think I could go into flip-flopping about whether or not I think Jack should have been disqualified or whether Andy should have been disqualified for days. So yeah, as I said, I'd be interested to see what you guys think. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. It's really appreciated, really helps the channel. And yeah, comment down below your thoughts on this episode and this season. Subscribe if you want to see more videos to do with Taskmaster. I'll have some more videos out for you soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!